Hi everybody and welcome along to Watercolour Wednesday. We're back and it's a new year and the first class of the year. So great to have you along with me to do this lovely little bird painting. I'm just going to go and adjust my screen whilst we wait for people to join. Say hello, give me a message, give me a wave so I know you're there. 11 of you watching, fabulous. Just making sure I can see your comments on my screen. There we go. Eleanor's first. Happy New Year, Eleanor. Thank you. Same to you. Wonderful, 14 of you. Excellent. We're going to have fun today with these little birds. They're so sweet, I just couldn't resist. A good way to kickstart our new year. Okay, so just to run you through, hi Suzanne, what we're going to be doing today. I've sketched out my birds. Now, I know there was problems with people seeing some of the comments on the page, but I did put a little sketch which I used by computer generated sketch of the birds. But here's my sketch of the birds down and here's the one that we're going to be replicating. So I'm working with today, 20 of you. Hi, 23, fabulous. I'm working on cold pressed watercolour paper, and cold pressed paper is one that has a texture to it. Most of my work is done on cold pressed paper. Hot pressed has a smooth texture, so that's the difference between the two. Okay, so he sketched out just in HB pencil. I've done it a little darker than I would normally do. Just for camera purposes, so hopefully you can see my little birdies sat here. Okay, and watercolours. I'm using my high pigment watercolour set, so it's a small set of 12 colours. We'll discount the white, so it's really 11, and those are what I'm going to be using. And the main colours we're using are blue, yellow, a little bit of cadmium red, some yellow ochre, I've forgotten what it's called. Some yellow ochre as well. Oops, let me just adjust the screen again because I'm not seeing your comments. 1 second, guys. Oh wow, hello, hello, hello. Now I can see you all. Fabulous. I wish the screen would keep up with your comments, save me jumping up and down, but I need the exercise, believe me, after Christmas. Yellow ochre, a little bit of burnt sienna and Payne's grey. And Payne's grey you can mix yourself using blue and brown if you haven't got Payne's grey. Hi CJ, hi Tina, Louise, Carol. Well, Carol Parrott, I love that surname. Deb, hiya Deb, good to have you along. So I have stretched the paper, although you don't really need to with this one because we're not using loads of water, okay? And this is a good thick paper. This is a 300 GSM paper. And if you are interested in paper, this is the one that I use and that I sell on my website, okay? 35% of it is pure cotton, and it's a nice thick 300 GSM, 140 pound acid-free paper. So you can get that on my website along with the brushes that I'm using as well. And this is a set of brushes. It gives you pretty much everything you need, including a half rigger brush in there. Okay, so we're going to start. We're going to be working a little bit wet in wet. It's quite a loose painting. Happy New Year, Sarah. Sabida, hi. Tracy, Wendy, Latanzi. Oh, Paramita, Roy from India. Wonderful to have you along. Margaret, you enjoy my teaching? Oh, thank you, Margaret. That's so lovely. Okay, I'm going to start with the bird on the left and then we're going to move across. Because we're going to do some wet in wet working. My chirpy voice, like the birds, Suzanne. Chirp, chirp. Yeah, I try and stay upbeat as best I can. Keep you all going. We're going to start with him. Because we're going to do some wet in wet work, we're going to be switching between birds, letting areas dry in between. You're working today, but you're going to catch up on your lunch break. You're welcome, Janine. Hi Angela from Telford, not too far away, Telford. Okay, so I'm going to start with my yellow. It's just a light lemon yellow. And instead of pre-wetting the bird, I'm going to use my first colour. Let me pop that there. Can you see my well? Yes. So I'm going to put a little bit of water in the well, just a couple of drops with my brush. I'm going to pick up some of my lovely bright yellow, cheerful yellow. On a cold day, we want some brightness and cheer in our lives at the moment. A little bit more water. Remember, the more water you add to the paint, the lighter the colour that you're going to get. And my first application, I want light. So into his belly. I'm just brushing this yellow all around his chest and down his belly, avoiding that V section in the middle. Nice and light, just drag that paint. You don't need much at all. I want you to go light and soft and gentle with your applications. Oh, brush size, Eleanor, I'm using my usual 12, and I've also got a 6 here as well for things like the eye and his legs. Most of my work I do with the size 12. Good question. Okay, also have some tissue nearby. Always have a bit of tissue. I've just put a bit of yellow where I don't want it, so I'm just going to dab down and just lift off and lighten near his neck. He's much lighter. Hi Tracy, Happy New Year. Now I want to tone this yellow down and bring some warmer colours through. So I'm going to come into my yellow ochre, move that up, put a little bit of yellow ochre into my puddle. So I'm changing that base yellow to a warmer yellow. And now I'm going to let the paint work wet in wet. So I'm reverting to using the tip of the brush rather than brushing it around. Just touching down with the tip of my brush in onto the already wet yellow paint that's on the paper. And you'll just let that dance around. Just use the tip to pull it and place it where you want those colours to be. The video will absolutely be recorded. It's going to stay on Facebook. All you have to do to watch it again is come back to the event and you will see the recording in the page. Okay, so I've got some darker yellows now, much richer, warmer colours. And I want to switch it up again. So this time I'm going to add a little bit, just a little bit at a time guys, of my cadmium red into my yellow mixture. Just taking it a bit more orangey. Go sparingly when you're adding the red, because red is a really strong colour and you don't want it to overpower. I'm going to take a little bit more. So I want an orange colour. Again, just tapping it in where I want some of those warmer tones and just let it, just play with it. Move it just with the tip of the brush if you want to move it, and then just see what happens. Let the magic happen on the paper. That will give you a nice, loose, beautiful painting rather than being too controlled. I know it's hard to let go sometimes. Okay. Now at the top of my yellow bird, I want to bring a little bit of colour next to his neck, but not too much. So I'm going to just add water around the top. Oops, my brush is still dirty. Bit of water, clean brush, and bring that water towards the yellow. You'll see what happens. The yellow spurts out. Watercolour loves water. What can I say? The clue's in the name, isn't it, guys? And where you put water, the paint will filtrate and it will move upwards. So it allows me to get a very light yellow around the top of his chest. I'm quite happy with that. I just want to pull a little bit of the yellow down his leg. Just on the top of his leg there. Just a tiny, tiny bit. Fabulous. So I'm going to see what happens and leave that for now. Leave it alone, walk away from the bird. If you want to add stronger colour, remember watercolours dry back lighter than when you put them on. So you may look at this in 10 minutes and think, I want a bit more pop of colour. So in that case, you'll just add another layer of your watercolours over the top. to get a stronger, richer colour. But for now, I'm going to leave that, and we're going to switch over to our other little bird. I wonder if I can get this in shot. If I pop that there, we may get it in shot. Now the other one's a little sparrow, and we'll be using browns and greys for our sparrow. So I'm going to start another puddle in my mixing well. Again, you can buy this mixing well from my website. It's ceramic. Okay, so your paint flows better in ceramic than it does in plastic. In plastic you can find it beads up and you get little bubbles. Ceramic is better for mixing, or just get a china plate out of your cupboard, so a porcelain plate. Okay, I'm going to take some yellow ochre now for our sparrow into my water. Again, working light to begin with. Yeah, just stick with this yellow ochre. I'm going to start under his beak. Come down across his wing. This is very, very light, guys. Very light. Coming under his wing. Just a bit of yellow for warmth. Just place that where you want it. And again, we're going to start mixing up our puddle. I'm just going to pop a bit more yellow ochre in. And add some of my burnt sienna. Remember, a tiny bit at a time. See what happens to your puddle and then decide if you want more. If you go too heavy, you'll find you're battling backwards and forwards, and your puddle will be getting stronger in colour because you're adding more and more paint to the mix. So just a little bit more sienna in there. That's about the colour I want. And I'm going to come round his chest. Now, as well as pulling and painting in a traditional style, can you see that I'm just laying that brush on, tapping it in and around that yellow ochre and letting it do its thing. Now those of you that have watched my tutorials before will know to get a nice strong colour, nice strong puddle, if you push your brush down on the paper, let me show you. Let me grab a bit of spare paper. Let's get some stronger colour just to show you what I mean. When you brush with your watercolour, you're spreading that colour out. When you want a strong pop of colour, push down on your brush and lift up, and you get these little strong puddles of colour. You're creating a puddle and you're not spreading that out and making it weaker. Look at the difference from placing, pushing and lifting and dragging. Different altogether. Okay, where was I? I got distracted again. Okay, into my puddle. Just a little bit more of that sienna. I'm going to start coming down his wing. Again, this is a nice loose painting, a good one to freshen up. Stay loose, don't get too tight, don't get too stressed. Just have fun placing your watercolour. I'll brush it when I just want to spread the colour, and when I want a strong colour, I'll do what I showed you there. Push down, lift off with the brush. So my base colours are coming along nicely. Be careful around his eye and the top of his head. I'm coming up onto the tip of my brush. These brushes give you such a wonderful point to them. They're really good and amazing quality. Just soaking up a bit of that water. I just want his head light. Very light. How's our bird doing the other side? He's drying nicely. Just going to activate there because it was drying with a line. Okay. Now darker. We want to go darker, and I want to bring some grey in. Now if you're lucky, you'll have Payne's grey. I've got Payne's grey here. Let me show you Payne's grey. Payne's grey is a beautiful bluey based grey. It's got a blue tint to it. Perfect for our bird. But if you don't have it, I want you to take your brown, and now I'm using sienna because that's the one I've got here. But you could also use burnt umber. And I'm going to take my ultramarine blue and mix the two together. And you will get your grey. I want this a bit bluer. Bit more blue, tiny bit at a time until you get the colour that you're looking for. And here we go. Always test it down on a scrap piece of paper, coming under his belly quite dark, just at the base of his belly there. And I'm also going to drop some of this with just the tip of my brush into, I need to put my glasses on, into the edge of his chest. Look, I just touch it with a fine hair on the end of the brush, and watch how that, because the paint's wet, it spreads through the colours that are already down. Okay, I want a little bit more blue in my grey, and I'm going to just lighten this area. I want to take the grey further up his body, so I'm just going to use water, just water, not too much, otherwise you could get a cauliflower effect, and bring that water down, down, down till it touches into that darker grey, and again allowing it to mix on the page. You can encourage it. My table's at a bit of an angle, so I'm just going to change the tilt. There we go. And encourage that grey to go up into the yellow ochres and the colours underneath. So we're building up a lovely base, soft muted colours in our birds. Size of brushes are 12 and 6. 12 and 6. Okay, now I'm going to go into his wings, and we want to darken his wings, add a bit more strength of colour. So I'm going back into my sienna, and I'm going to make my puddle stronger. So I want a creamier consistency in my puddle. Now the sienna is slightly too red for me, slightly too orangey. So to calm it down, the same mixture, I'm going to go into my ultramarine blue and add it to the puddle until I get the colour. The ultramarine is going to darken that brown down, take some of the redness away. There we go. And I'm going to start placing this wet into wet along the dark areas of my bird. I'm going to come just under the eye there, right up onto the tip of the brush, letting it bleed and play in the colours underneath where it's already wet. Coming into the edges of his wing. Now I'm pulling the colour, stroking it, and letting my brush flick out at the end to create some ruffled feathers. It's like he's just been in a bird bath and he's come out and he's drying himself, shaking his feathers. So we've got some ruffled tuffle feathers coming on. I'm just going to stand up to get a good angle. I'm going to bring some ruffled feathers coming out the back, like his wing, some feathers from his wing there. Whoops. There we go. Nice and loose, remember. Don't try and over control it. Let it happen. Place your darks where you want them. They will spread slightly. Enjoy that process. I'm going to take his tail feathers now, coming out and up. And again, not being, I didn't even draw his tail. We'll just pop some feathers in there. I'm shaking his tail feathers. Fabulous. Now, all the time we're working over here, this side is starting to dry back. And when you want a bit more control, I want you to let that dry back. It should still be damp, so your paint's not going to leave a hard edge, but it won't spread as far. When you drop wet into wet, there are different stages of wet into wet. At this stage, the paint's going to spread a long way. But if you wait a while, it will spread less. And the creamier your paint, the less it's going to spread. So I want to go into the top of his head now, and I want to go stronger still. So more brown into my puddle. And if you don't have this ready brown, don't worry, just add some yellow and a bit of red into your burnt umber is an option. I want this darker still, a bit more blue into my mix, ultramarine blue. Look how it darkens that. Beautiful, rich, dark colour. And what I want to do, put my glasses back on, is come into this little point near his beak. So just coming up, I'm still using my number 12 brush, and I'm just popping this darker, richer colour in certain places around my bird. I also want to take some, let me just making the paint creamier every time you see me go into my pans, and you can use tubes for this. I just prefer pans for small scale work. Making it creamier and darker. Remember, creamier is not going to spread as far, and I really want to darken the edge of his wing feather here. Add a bit of stronger colour into his tail. And working wet in wet allows these colours to blend and bleed and not leave you with harsh lines. Okay, he's coming on nicely. Just a few little extra feathers in. Now they're going to bleed, they're not going to sit there and look harsh. I'm going to go back under his belly and darken that as well. So blue, it's the same mixture. I could just go into my Payne's Grey, but I'm going to turn this into Payne's Grey again by adding more blue. Beautiful, rich, deep blue, grey blue, and I want to make just under here where his leg joint is darker, because he's in shadow, isn't he? So just darkening that. Okay, he's coming along well. Legs, again, I'm going to use my grey blue, grey brown, a bit more brown in it this time. I just keep playing with this same puddle, changing it to the colour I want. So I've just added a little bit more brown in this time. Now, if you want to, you can go to your smaller brush for the legs, might be advisable. And we're just going to go wet on to dry, coming down the front of his leg. Nice creamy consistency to your paint. Catch that little angle at the top of his leg this side. Come down, and really you're coming down the left edge of his leg. They're only skinny little legs. I'm coming into his claws, his talons, into his toes and his nail. And we've got his spindly little legs in place. Bless him. Now I'm just going to take, well, this is a tiny area, okay guys, don't get hung up about it. I'm just going to take a damp brush and take that over his leg so that one side of his leg is lighter than the other. Okay, it's very small, but just taking just damp brush, coming down to spread out that paint that you've put down, and it will be slightly lighter. We'll let that dry, and if you need to darken the front of his leg again, you can. Let's go into his beak with this mixture as well. Tiny brush up onto your point. And I'm just putting dark on the top part of his beak, not the bottom. And adding a little bit of grey to his head. Okay, it's nearly at the point where we should let him dry for a little while. I'm just going to put another couple of splodges. I'm going to take my brown mixture here and just add a bit more colour and some splodges. My bird is still damp, so these splodges are going to spread. Just gives that bit of texture to his fur. He's nearly done. Remember, the good thing about watercolour, as it dries, you're going to get a wonderful crisp line around his chest. I just want to darken that line. I'm just taking my Payne's Grey straight from the pan and just coming onto my point, just to tidy up the line along his chest. Sharpen it up a bit. And a little tiny shadow under his beak there. So the last thing to do with our sparrow is to pop his eye in. Last time I did it, I didn't leave as much of a glint as I want in his eye. So I'm just going to come into his little tiny eyeball, Payne's Grey. If you haven't got your Payne's Grey, remember you can just go on your pan, brown, blue, brown blue to get the strongest pigment, and always end with the blue and test your colour first. So straight from the pan, coming in the underside of his eye. And then I'm cleaning my brush. I'm just going to take a little bit of water, tiny bit of water, into the top section of his eye and creep towards the colour that I've just put down. So it's going to spread a little bit, but still leave you with a glint in one side of his eye. Just bring his mask. There we go. So my sparrow's done. We can go back and visit our blue tit. 2 lessons in a row, Rebecca. Yes, you was there last night. Rebecca joined me last night for Daisy the cow in acrylics. Good to have you back. I'm just going to have a bit of my tea, give you a chance to catch up. That was a real fun class last night. I'll show you what we did. She's on my wall in my studio. I love her. So this is the class that Rebecca did with me last night. Our wonderful Daisy cow. It was such fun. If you fancy painting a cow, you still can. I have already uploaded the class to my website. So just go to the on-demand page of my website, which I set up at the weekend. And you will be able to look at past classes. There's about 20 or 30 classes on there at the moment, and you can just buy them. You get sent the reference picture, and then as soon as I pick up the email, I send you the link for you to go and view the tutorial. And there's no time limit. You can watch it whenever you like. It doesn't expire. Okay, let's go to our little bird on the left then, shall we? And we're going to tackle his head and the beautiful blues within him. Now, I'm going to use my azure blue, which is this one here. Anyone that's got this set will have exactly the same colour. You can see it's a bit more peacocky blue rather than ultramarine. If I show you ultramarine, it's much darker, more like a navy. This one's got a bit of yellow to it. So if you haven't got this colour, you could add a little bit of yellow, just a tiny bit, and a tiny bit of red to your normal blue. Okay, this is the colour I want to use. I'm going to take it strong, make my puddle nice and creamy from the outset. And this time I'm going to start, make sure he's dry. I'm going to start at the top of his head, nice and light. It's a good amount of water on my brush, so the colour's nice and light. Coming around his face, down his neck, under the beak. And also I'm going to take it and see what I'm doing again. I'm going nice and light to start with, rather than going heavy straight off. I'm going to take a bit of a wing down the side, and this time I think I'm going to make him flap his wing. I'm going to have some feathers coming out. Why not? Let's change it up. Let's make it a bit different from last one. And you can see a tiny bit of another wing on the right hand side. So all the colours are quite weak at this stage, and then we're going to strengthen them. The only bit I'm going to do with strong colours from the off is the band that goes across his eye. I'm going to take my azure blue, I'm going to add a tiny bit of brown to it. Tiny bit of brown, just to darken it even more. That band across his eyes almost looks black. Okay. I don't want to go where there's water, because we know what will happen, it will spread. Coming around right on the tip of the brush. You see, I'm still using my number 12 brush, but if you want to, move down to a smaller one. purely because the point's so good. I don't need to move down a size. So bring in that band, strong colour around his eye and towards his beak, on his head there. Leave the eye for now, we'll come back to the eye in a moment. So just leave that circle for the eye. Okay, back to my azure blue and coming into this section we left on his belly. Pop that in there. And can you see his towel underneath? Don't forget his towel. We're going to pop the same colour on his towel, and it splits. So it's together at the top under his belly and then comes down and then a little bit peeking out behind the wire. Got a lot of water on my page, so I'm just using my brush like a sponge just to soak some of the puddles up. And here, too much water. Okay, if you've got any questions, just type them in the comments. I'm keeping my eye on there if there's anything that you're not sure of. Okay, now I'm going to take my azure bleu and make my puddle much creamier, stronger. I'm coming in under the neck, wet into wet. I'm staying close to the body and then letting it bleed upwards. You don't need to touch it, just let that happen. And again, into his belly. On the left hand side, I'm just touching down with the tip of my brush. Some stronger blue. And into his tail feathers. I'm going straight from the pan this time. Beautiful colours, isn't it? Just joyous, doesn't it just make you happy? Makes me happy. Painting makes me happy. I've got the best job in the world, guys. Having you along makes it all worthwhile. There we go. So he's pretty much done other than his beak and his eye. I'm happy with the way his belly has turned out. Pleased with those colours. If you wanted to take it a bit stronger, just mix yourself some more yellow, a bit of orange, a bit of yellow ochre. And you would just go in with some fresh paint. Dab it around. But the key here, and this is important, I'll show you the azure bleu in a second, Suzanne. We'll try and mix it together. So I've dropped some stronger colour on his belly. A little bit more orange in there. A little bit more. Just drop. There's that word again that I use, drop. I'm literally dropping that colour in. And I don't want a harsh line. So I'm bringing clean water and coming up and sneaking up on that paint. And just bringing clean water to the edge. So it spreads a little bit and doesn't leave you with a nasty harsh line. His belly was still wet, so I shouldn't really have done that. So I'm just scooping up that colour. The blue has run a little bit into the yellow. I quite like it. Okay, let's try and mix azure bleu. Azure bleu. I haven't been drinking, I promise. So I'm going to take ultramarine blue. Let's see if we can do this. Into the middle. I'm going to add a tiny bit of yellow. So it's going to go green. A bit more blue again. A bit more ultramarine. We're nearly there already. Just want the tiniest bit of yellow. And that's going to give you like a kingfisher blue. You'll never get it exact. And I'm going into my crimson red. A little bit of crimson red. Bit more blue. So these are the two puddles side by side. Bit more yellow. Just play. Add a bit of yellow. Add a tiny bit of red. Don't use the orangey red. Use the crimsony red. Bit more yellow. We'll get there. Touch more blue. It's quite close. Yellow, blue. I think I accidentally picked up a bit of brown there. Yeah, I've got a bit of brown in my mixture, so it's kind of ruined it. There we go. So rather than, so somewhere in between, so there's the ultramarine on its own, and now you've got this kind of teal colour that you've mixed up. Okay, legs. Let's do his legs, same colour as before, that dark grey. Let's get a bit dark grey, quite creamy, because we don't want it to run. Ultramarine and your brown, bit more blue, till you get the grey, Payne's grey we're looking for, and come down his little spindly legs. Again, I'm still using my size 12 brush because it's such a good one and has such a lovely point to it, so I'm fine with that. Right onto the tip, take it slowly, come round his talons, into his feet, and then nice and creamy again, go straight from your pan, blue, brown, or if you've got Payne's grey, pick up your Payne's grey, and if his head's dry, I want you to go back into his eye. Oh, thanks Martina. Just tapping in around his eye, at the bottom of his eye like we did before. And then just creeping up around the top of his eye. Take your time, leave that glint. Sorry. It's back. I'm so sorry guys, I lost internet connection there for a moment and I lost you all. And I've managed to get it back so we can finish our class. Oh, Teresa's back as well. Maybe it was your fault, Teresa. You joined and then it crashed. So we're back. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's go down to the branch, to the wire. I'm going to start the wire with a little bit of my burnt sienna to give it that coppery feel. You want to stay away from any wet paint here. Now my towel is still wet, so let me just suck up some of that paint a minute. And his feet are still wet. So whilst that's still wet, let's do something else. If you want your birds to look a bit blurred out, I want you to take some clean water, come down around your bird just with clean water and touch into his wing where it's still damp, and you'll just activate a little bit of that paint. It gives it a bit of movement and some softness, so just clean water on the page and creep in towards the bird, and where there's any paint that's still slightly wet, you'll just catch it and it will bleed out. Now that bit was still very wet, so I'm just going to catch and scoop some of it up with my brush, dry brush, and let it act like a sponge. I like this look. As you can see, in a lot of my work I do this. I'm bringing clean water towards my bird, and if it has dried, you can still reactivate the paint with a little bit of gentle persuasion and get this sense of movement and water. As I say, I think they've just been in a bird bath. So just activating some areas around the bird and letting it bleed out. It's very pretty. If it goes too far, remember, you've also got your tissue. I'm just going to trim that back a little bit. We'll do our splatters now as well, whilst we're waiting for their feet to dry. I'm also going to wet all around, patchy. I'm not going to take it a full coating, just some patchy water around the background. And the reason I'm doing this is I'm going to splatter, guys. My favourite bit, I'm going to splatter. And if you've got a wet background, as you splatter, the marks of the paint are going to spread in the water. So I'm going to take some of this lovely dark blue, load up my brush, and to splatter, you just hold your brush. This is the way I do it. I hold my brush horizontal to the paper and I give it a tap. Some people tap it on their hand. You don't want to do a splatter pulling back. You do that when you've got something that's running and moving. But for this, I just want nice loaded brush. I'm just going to tap down. Doesn't matter if it goes on the bird. It all adds to it, I think. Splatter. Where some of the bubbles of water paint have hit the wet paper, they're spreading out. And where they've hit the dry paper, they stay small. Okay, so you get a mixture. That lovely look. I'm going to put some yellow ochre in as well, into my orange here. I have some yellowy ones. Oops. And again, I've not wet underneath, so let me just put some water underneath. Just random where you put the water. And then, as I say, when you splatter, some of the marks are going to hit dry paper and some will hit wet paper. There we go. How wonderful is that? Okay, his towel's still not dry, so I'm just going to dry that off so I can show you the branch. I keep calling it a branch, don't I? I'm losing my mind. Okay, so into my burnt sienna. I'm going to take my burnt sienna all over, just leaving a few bits of white paper here and there. The wire coming across along that wire as it twists and turns, but I'm leaving a few bits that are going to act as highlights that I'll keep white. So just a bit stronger with the colour. Going straight over their feet. Okay, and then we're going to go in with that lovely rich bluey grey again. Remember, brown, blue, brown, blue. I want you to always end with the blue, and that will give you a nice, strong, rich grey. Look at that, it's almost black. I'm going to take that where I want shadows, wet into wet. Really creamy though, guys. Really creamy so it doesn't spread too much. Coming around the twists and turns of the barbed wire. Still leaving some areas white. Is my head in shot again? It is, isn't it? Coming around these curly bits. And you've got a few bits of wire that's sticking out. Now you can play with this for a little while longer, making some areas darker. Wait for it to dry back a little bit. There we go. Left some highlights. And there we have it. Today's project complete. Wonderful. Where's the beak? The beak's here. Lorna, just here. Very light grey. His head's tucked down. He's got his head tucked down, so his beak's there. There's his eye. So you're following this line. There's his beak. There. Now, I'm not going to put ink around this, but you could do. You could ink over the top, but I like this looking loose and fresh and beautiful. In fact, this one is definitely going to end up on one of my mugs. I love it so much. And I think it would wrap round quite nicely with one bird either side. What do you think? Okay, before I let you go, guys, please remember, if you want to book a class, you go to my live class page of my website. I've got a fabulous one. You love your watercolours coming up. I've got the hares. And I was playing around with these the other day. They're not finished. These were just practice ones. So I've got this class coming up at the end of January. £10. It's a live class on Zoom, different to what we're doing here. £10 to join that one. It's towards the end of January, so check that out. And also remember, you can go to my website again on the On Demand tab, and there you can purchase previous lessons that you want to have a go at. And at the moment, because of lockdown and the depression that everyone's in, I'm offering 20% off both my live classes and the recorded classes. For the live classes, you need to put in unlock20, all one word, for your voucher code. And for the recorded lessons, it's unlock21. I had to do 2 separate codes because of my website. So please check them out. If you want to order any products, go on my website on the product page, and I'll leave you to enjoy the rest of your day. I hope you've had fun painting with me. Please spread the word, share your experience today, check in, hit the check-in button on my Facebook as well, and then people will know that you've been here and you've took part, and that will help me spread the message wide. So thank you again for staying with me. Sorry about the technical hitch in the middle, but hopefully you've all created some beautiful paintings that you're going to share with me and post them in the link. Thanks everybody. Been a pleasure as always, and I'll see you again next Wednesday, 1 o'clock. Bye for now. Enjoy your painting. Bye. Bye-bye.